talk about what happened. And then you can go to Occupy University.
All right, so it's like we're coming back, and we're going to talk about what's going to happen next week, and then break out for Occupy University.
Report back.
By the fall, we have a good basis to work from, and that's the basic part of it. If you're interested in contributing at all or working with us, you're more than welcome to sign the sheet here.
Great. And report back from other breakout? Fracking?
So,
Okay, you guys got it? Okay.
So we have to do more planning. We're going to meet Monday night to do more planning, but basically we're going to talk about fracking and other environmental issues in connection with the Bethesda fountain. So we're going to do some outreach to people to try to then bring people in to have a conversation about that. So any other details?
Yeah, one other thing that we talked about, our main tactic for this one is going to be outreach. After we finish, rather than dispersing, we're going to try to just talk with people, because that's something that we haven't done as much of. So that's going to be our main tactical goal.
We want to create a march that's like visually engaging and that looks welcoming. So we want to try to get other, like the people that are standing around, to be potentially more involved than just seeing us walk by and maybe take a flyer.
Andy has a sign up if you want to get involved and come to the meeting.
Was there another breakout group?
There was one more, right?
I think they just had to not do an actual series. So this is what we need to do now. So those two groups need to be in communication. So each group has to have all of their emails, and then each group needs to be able to communicate to each other so that they can maybe coordinate a group meeting together. Maybe if you're meeting Monday night, you said? Or you guys are meeting Monday night?
We didn't work out a time yet, but we'll discuss that.
It'd be great if all groups could meet together. I'll stand because I know that thing. I'm fighting technology! So, those groups need to be in communication by email. You need to both have a meeting mid-week, preferably together, so you not only bottom line the actions that you're doing, but the introduction, what we did here today, with the plus training, with talking about the themes of student things, how you engage and start the ceremony up, how you come back, like everything. You just need to talk through the whole narrative of it together. So, yes.
And also, something else to discuss in that meeting would be the question of an ultimate reconvergence point. And that part of these actions we've been doing the last 3 weeks, we want to preserve that and redo it in a new context in Central Park or whatever it is. But I think it seems like it's going to fall to the people who are bottom lining those actions to kind of come up with those decisions about the sites and then what the kind of whether to extend the rituals we've been doing into this next phase of the portal.
So I think we're closing out to go to Occupy University. You get my email too. I can connect you to the larger Summer This Meeting School groups and the coordinators, so everyone can be on the conversation and help out. Yeah? Great. So go get educated. Occupy University, I think it's over here. There in that corner in the shade.
Just in the shade, maybe
So,
away from this really annoying
I think I'm going to do I'm gonna go with horizontal pedagogy.
Imposing into legal feeling also somewhere over in the shade over there. So.
You know what? I think I might go with legal solidarity, actually. No, I think I'm going to go with pedagogy. Made my mind up.
Okay, see you.
I'll just hold it up for like a few more minutes.
I thought you would do the trick to like.
What's your name? I saw you taking notes. Are you?
Yeah, I'm gonna head out.
So right now we're breaking out into different, almost like classes, assemblies for Occupy University. There's going to be one on legal solidarity training. It says mutant legal solidarity training. I know what that means. Horizontal pedagogy, which is the one I'm going to go to.
Where in Brazil are you coming from?
There's going to be one on poetry, radical economics, and I think there's one on student debt too.
For a few weeks.
Done
But Salvador's in the city, right? Yeah.
radical economics and student debt, and those are on my Ustream archive and also on my YouTube channel.
You know, it wasn't a time.
This time I'm going to do horizontal pedagogy.
Hey, you're still there. You're all radiant up. Oh, I see the radiant.
You know, I'll hold up for a few more minutes and then see.
Yeah, Brett and Amelia, Nathan here. And folks who, yeah, so it's good. So folks who both like.
I've been sort of planning by email.
Coordination with folks who want to direct action groups.
Tutoring thing with Occupy University.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. So, yeah.
Have you been working with that? Yeah, I mean, I have been.
Yes, I've been talking about it, and like she, I think also is but the idea was like as anybody who's reading this could see
I get your email.
If you were on that series of emails.
We have like a series of meeting times and like.
this is where
If you want to offer a class, you come to a meeting, you talk to us about it.
I mean, I was thinking more like peer tutoring.
Yeah. I remember that coming up at a meeting.
Learning about this.
Well,
Okay, great. Alright. Yeah, it's just the idea of how
Shady Place,
website.
Do you ever read Kurt Vonnegut? Like the story Harrison Bertrand?
Yeah.
You know, like how they have that stuff that like fixes your brain.
Okay, it's all about why do we not have demand?
I feel like I was like this does that to me. Yeah, whatever I'm thinking about.
Our task and what we're good at is to match
So maybe like over there-ish,
Yeah, over
in the shade.
in all of its parts of the connection.
Maybe like
So this is
match over there.
Maybe, yeah.
Can I ask you, do you use one of those external batteries?
Yep.
For what I've been meaning to get one. Is there a brand you would suggest? Or?
I mean, the one I use is New Trend. It's lightweight and it works. I mean, I've never gone dead in the field or anything.
Awesome. Okay.
It's like 20 hours, 200 recharges or whatever. New Trent.
New Trent?
Yeah. Yeah, some people lug around these big old things, but the one I've got is pretty lightweight.
I saw this one guy who jury-rigged just like a lead acid battery with an inverter.
See, that would be so dangerous. I'd be afraid to do that.
Not right next to us. And the sun is going to eventually go behind those trees. So. All right, cool. Yeah, we'll just start. Is that right?
Yeah, Chris Brown, I think his name is. With the black hat and the.
Oh yeah? Oh, Chris Brown?
On the far left hand.
Yeah.
So right now we're at Bryant Park. We have broken out to Occupy University. I'm going to be at a little assembly on horizontal pedagogy. My name is Waylon Lank. I'm at lank.tv. Thanks for watching. Thank you for restreaming me.
Alright. So we'll just start. If people want to come, they'll come. I have these bubbles too. In case we're in bubbles. Cool. So hi. Here's what I was thinking for today. So we have this thing called horizontal pedagogy, and the thing is essentially a set of procedures. It's a method that we've worked on for some time, and I was thinking that today I could give a little like introduction to the method, like what it is, step by step, each of the procedures, and explain each step, and then we could actually just practice it. That's what I was thinking for today.
Cool.
Does anyone have any objections to that? Okay. So this is kind of like, it'll be like an introduction. So if like you have a question or something, just jump in. And I'm going to talk for a little bit, but that's kind of usually not how horizontal pedagogy goes. But when folks see horizontal pedagogy, it's kind of like, well, what is that? So I figured go into a little bit about what it is, and then we do it. So, okay, horizontal pedagogy first. Yeah.
Just a question. Is it about like you're talking about like a classroom, a real classroom, for example, like approaching students or whatever, or you're talking about like in a meeting, for example, like the way Occupy works, for example, it has kind of a horizontal logic. Is it something like that, or both? What is it?
It's both. I have begun trying it with students in classrooms and institutional settings, but also we use it on the street. So it's good for both. And I would say that since it was kind of born in the street, it's more at home in the street. And in an institutional context, it's very it's very different, because in a school, when you're living in a school, when you're working in a school, you've got parents, you've got administrators, you've got other teachers in your department, and all of these people, when you teach a certain way, I've seen it. If you teach in a way that's kind of a little provocative, it becomes threatening very quickly. And this kind of pedagogy I've seen practiced in private schools and public schools, and I've seen these different groups of people become pretty threatened by it. So I think it can be used in both. Yeah. Are we just like in the heat right now? Do we want to? It's a little too hot, right? I feel like we're gonna get burned out.
Yeah.
I bet if we just moved like right there.
Move a little further into the shade.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, yeah, much better. Okay. So we'll start. We'll start with the words themselves. Horizontal, you should be pretty familiar with. I mean, essentially, this is horizontal pedagogy. Is just a pedagogy or a way of teaching that comes out of the Occupy movement. It's supposed to be like, we use horizontal methods when we do action planning, and when we do meet for whatever reason, to plan something. We use horizontal and participatory democracy practices and GAs in the way we communicate. And so we thought at Occupy University that we should also transport that idea into how we learn and how we teach. And so we've been trying to figure out how it is that you can have an educational experience that is horizontal. So horizontal just means like all of those participatory democracy, that good stuff that we have in the US. Pedagogy, it's a word that I've been doubting whether or not we should continue to use, because it gets a lot of confusion sometimes. But it's a word that refers directly to how you teach. I mean, the word historically comes from peda, which means child, gogos, which generally is just kind of way or study. So it's like the way with child, the way with the learning of something.
What do you think you'd use instead of peda?
Hello.
Teaching.
Teaching, yeah, like horizontal teaching, maybe. Yeah, horizontal teaching. It's like a lesson. Thing, I guess.
Calling it pedagogy though does indicate like the discourse that it's
Yeah.
sort of because if people have read like all of this, they'll kind of recognize for sure.
I'm just curious, what are some of the oppositions you've heard to pedagogy?
Like the word?
Yeah.
Like just on Thursday night, yeah. Essentially, like just last night, and these are kind of classic disruptors. But like Sage came up, and we were having a horizontal meeting. Like we had horizontal pedagogy on a board in the center, and he was like, "What does pedagogy even mean? You guys are like, totally succumbing to the thing you're trying to overcome. You're elitist in the ivory tower."
Sage has a way about him, but yes.
Yeah, and you know what? I really don't like the way he goes about it. But that particular point, like we had people coming by, and they would look at it, and some would kind of be interested, others would pass by. But we had a couple people stop by, and then like when Sage was there, they were like, "Yeah, I didn't really know what it meant either, but now I do, and it's cool." So it's like it is kind of elitist, but I don't think that pushing people's familiarity is necessarily a bad thing.
But they prefer to use like
We could, yeah. That's just something I'm thinking.
I also think like just in the spirit of Occupy too is like reclaiming language and saying like, okay, if that's we're gonna own that word pedagogy and it has meaning and it's open and it's not elitist. We're doing it in a whole nother way, which is horizontal, and just to own it back, and claim it.
I'd like to comment about that. Because I come from Brazil, and I don't know if you heard of Paulo Freire.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I mean he actually tries to rebuild the idea of pedagogy.
Yeah.
Right? And there's another guy. I just read a book which is named The Ignorant Master.
Rancière.
Yeah, Rancière. It's great,
It's
man.
so good.
And
he's at the heart of what we do.
yeah. So I've been doing a study in Occupy, as I told you, and when I read the book, I saw Occupy right in front of my eyes.
Yeah.
It's like everybody is capable to do whatever their will permit them to do that. It's like it's not about capacity; it's about the will you use to do that. I mean, it's great. So it's approached a lot the idea of equality.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's why when I saw it was like horizontal pedagogy, I just read into it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, at the core of the method that we'll go through is the idea of assuming the equality of intelligence. That's what we try to do. We put a lot of weight on the idea that there are inequalities of knowledge and an equality of intelligence. So everyone can think, everyone can make their way in the world, everyone knows different stuff, but the way that we think is empowering to learn and teach is in a way that assumes that everyone can think, that no one needs to learn how to learn. Like no one needs to learn how to think. And you don't need anyone else to do that. Now, you're going to have your interests and where you're going, and we're going to form a group and then focus on things together. But if you assume that, the whole educational moment looks totally different. So that's what. That's like a very glad you brought that up. That's a very interesting.
Do you try to facilitate for like different a diversity of learning styles? I don't know. I mean, that's like a tricky ground to get in. Because like ideally, everyone could just learn by getting together and having dialogue, right? But some people are disposed towards different sorts of ways of processing information.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess like if it boils down too much to just like everyone is equally intelligent, I mean it's great, but like you still have to account for different ways of processing information, which I think is what gets labeled as a learning disability.
Yeah. It's a really interesting tension, and it's something that we kind of hold. Like I think the idea of the equality of intelligence is actually pretty provocative, and not necessarily in ways that we should all just agree with. Totally. I mean, the whole American Disabilities Act that then created the entire structure of funding for differences of learning styles. that assumes an inequality of intelligence, and people get all kinds of money to be able to learn and be like educated in ways that fit their personality, their ways in the world. Sometimes they're physical, like the way that their mind works, and so it's just assuming that everyone can think, is almost a kind of fantasy, that these differences that we have don't matter, or they shouldn't matter, or we can live in a world where, like, if you're dyslexic, for instance, or if I'm a tactile learner, or you don't get as much from me speaking right now. So I think one thing that I've been coming much more to grips with recently is what horizontal pedagogy is good for and what it's not good for. And I think it's really important to be explicit about these things. It's not a fix-all. It's not something that we need to like coat the world with. It's not something that should be happening in every classroom with every student in every place in the world. I think that horizontal pedagogy, one thing that it can do is it helps in an educative setting to successfully form a group and to create a situation of like empowerment and placing the weight on collective expertise. So I don't want to talk too much about it because we'll do it and then we'll debrief it afterwards. But let me tell you about the procedures, and then we'll practice it, and then we can talk about it afterwards because you can't really. It's hard to talk about it before you. Is that cool?
Yep.
Okay. So the first thing, we have like a kind of list, and we go in order. The first thing that we do that I think is very important, and actually really important in institutional settings too, is to give an introduction to who we are, where we're at, what we're doing here. Like at the beginning of an educational setting, it's like, okay, here we are. I used to like to say, we are the Horizontal Pedagogy Task Force of the Occupy University Subcommittee of the Education and Empowerment Working Group of the Occupy Wall Street Movement, and we are here today to discuss whatever. And that's it, But like if you're in a school setting, it's like we are in 10th grade literature class here in a public school, in New York City, and we're talking about the Great Gatsby, like just to give a kind of context, because a lot of people come in from wherever they're coming in from, and if you just start doing something educational, it's going to hit them in a weird way, and I just don't think the conditions aren't necessarily set well. So there's that introduction, and there's a bunch of procedures that are really to set the moment, prepare the moment for it to be educational. So the next one after introduction is check-in, and that's check-in. That's a check-in. Yeah, so you go around, you say your name, and I like to do like how you're feeling, because typically in educational moments you don't get to talk about how you're feeling, and typically when you bring whatever you're feeling into the space, that's going to have a lot to do with what you're going to take away from it, and if we all know that you're feeling shitty because like your shower was broken this morning and like your roommate's being a real dick, like then we know, like, and you are able to say that. And a lot of times I found in educational situations, like, I will resent the educator for not knowing that my shower was broken or that my roommate's being shitty, but I never had a chance to say anything. So it can really help clear the way. So there's introduction, check-in. There's phys ed, which I think is really important. Phys ed is just to do something for a few minutes with your body, because educational moments tend to be kind of physically restrictive. We tend to be sitting, our muscles are kind of like this, we're hunched over, we're listening, not a lot of movement. So if you have phys ed,
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for getting in touch with Pam. Oh, it's on the day, man.
He's been on a horizontal pedagogy program. So yeah, we do phys ed because a lot of times when learning is a very like this, but if we do something like moving around for a little while, the body gets cool, and then you can kind of be there better. Okay, so intro, check-in, phys ed, and then the fourth step starts to get into the focusing element, and there's a part called examine a text. Now today I'm going to edit this. This is kind of a big moment for horizontal pedagogy. I'm just going to leave it at the word examine. And the reason why is because I think today, what's different about today for me is that I haven't brought anything for us to examine. Typically you'll bring in some kind of poem or some kind of statistic or history, or sometimes we'll share experiences or an object, and we'll examine that. But today, we're gonna figure out something together to examine. Hopefully that's in common and is easy to examine. But you need to have something beyond just the kind of thoughts and experiences of the group. Because if you don't, it's not necessarily going to be education, it's going to be therapy, which is fine. Therapy's great. Like, forming a group successfully and having a therapeutic experience is really great. But it's not sufficient for an educational experience. It's different. Education is something else. It's when something, I think, from outside of your experience or familiarity enters it somehow. So we're going to examine. That's the fourth. The fifth one is question. And it's really important, because in a lot of educational moments, people are just going to want to start saying what they think. As soon as they've examined something, they want to say, like, I think this is oppressive, or I think this is indicative of the 1%, or something like that. They just start saying what they think. And a facilitator in a horizontal situation should be like, hold on, no, we don't want that. Stop. We want questions. We want to know what you don't know. We want to know what you're not sure about. We want to know what everybody all together is kind of doubtful about. There's a shared point of doubt. That's what we want to focus on. Not what you do know, not what you think. This has actually got me in trouble in a lot of movement situations, because I think a lot of people come to educational meetings in the movement to just say what they think, and that's it. Like, they don't really come to really learn something. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're like totally conservative or totally radical or whatever. An educational moment is when you come away thinking something different. So to kind of help guarantee that, we spend time questioning. Okay, now in this moment the facilitator is usually writing down these questions. And we'll go through this so it'll be more clear. After we have those questions, we have a discussion. The discussion is just, we pick a question or a set of those questions, and typically we talk about it. In the horizontal pedagogy classes, as we've been experimenting different ways of discussing, which are sort of more metaphorical. We have Skillshare, which isn't necessarily back and forth talking, but like making stuff together and communicating that way. But typically we'll pick some questions and then we'll talk about it. And then wherever the discussion goes, the facilitator is just kind of keeping an eye on it and seeing where it goes. And then at some point, you're going to want to stop. The discussion usually could continue forever, but life goes on, so you have to close it. And then there are two more steps. There's a closing remark or a takeaway. So everyone goes around in a circle. If you have something that you've learned or that you've taken away, you say, that's your time to say. And after that, there's a moment for debriefing, where we talk about how it went. Not just like what we learned, but like how it went. So, for instance, if there was a disruptor and someone came in and started really yelling, we were like, man, that was really tough. Like when that guy just came in and started yelling at us. Or like, if there are cops over there and they're bothering us with the noise of the train. Or if a facilitator does something that you kind of don't like, that's a moment to say stuff like that. It's supposed to be a safe space to talk about like the process and not just the product of the learning. And that's it. That's horizontal pedagogy. So my proposal is that we just try it. This is going to be the first time for me, because I've never not had something to examine, but I think it opens it up better if we all spend a few minutes when we get to that examine part to figure out something to examine together, because then it's really just about all of us here right now together, and we can stand to learn something from it. So I feel like I've already given the introduction. Does anyone have any questions or comments before?
If I did and then left. Okay. But I want to learn more about this. Okay. Right, thanks for letting me sit in.
Well, my name's Waylon, and my foot's asleep.
feeling sort of I was arrested Wednesday night, and my whole life has been it's just been an interesting couple of days in aftermath of that, in relationship to my activism, I guess my ideologies, and where I stand in this movement. And I'll just share that I'm feeling sort of more focused and strong than ever. So.
I'm Jonna. I'm feeling a little worn out. I've been organizing all the solidarity marches with like a core group of people, and now we're working on possibly a national call out and all that stuff. So like lots of meetings, lots of all that kind of stuff on top of. I had a show last night with an art collective that I've been working with, and other things, and performance tomorrow. So it's kind of been like one thing after the next, and I also just moved to New York, so it's kind of just like crazy. It's been great, but it's been crazy. So trying to take it easy for a little bit.
My name is Tiago, and I feel excited. I think that is the best word. And I came from Brazil, for the ones who don't know, just to study Occupy. And I'm spending like 4 or 5 months here, getting no money for that, but my uncle is helping me, so that's why I'm here. And I do it because I really believe in that. So yeah, I'm excited.
I'm Dave, and I'm feeling nice about being in Bryant Park. I haven't been here in a while. What else is happening? I'm studying right now. I'm in school, and I'm studying for my comprehensive exams, which are next Friday. So I'm at the end of like a almost 2-year process of reading all these books. It's going over them, which is really cool, but it's really like, whoa. So I'm kind of in philosophy land right now. All right, so check-in. Next is phys ed. Does anyone have any nice little, like not very long, kind of short, but like maybe physical stuff with the body?
I feel like I should, because I'm a theater person, but off the top of my head,
Nothing?
I can't think of anything.
Any Meisner things or something?
No.
There was one that it makes me like a little nervous, but it really puts me in my body, which is I think it's a theater exercise. Someone did it once at phys ed. Do you mirror somebody? So like you stand right in front, just looking at them, and then
Right.
like
Nice.
whoever moves first, you have to you have to do that. It's really
Yeah,
kind of
mirroring's great.
puts in your body. Got that?
Do that.
Shall we?
You want to try that? Okay.
Cool. This will be fun with this.
Yeah, how are you gonna do that?
The other person.
I'm gonna be at the mercy of my my partner.
Alright, who's find a partner. Alright.
Jonna, right?
Yeah, just
Waylon.
Waylon. Like,
Waylon.
get a moment. Not that cool.
Okay.
It's okay. It's just gonna be like it's gonna be following this movement. We're just gonna stand. Whoever moves first, you just have to follow. Yeah, anything. It could be like simple or complicated. You want me to start? Yeah. Oh, okay, sure. Then I can come on, yeah. Go ahead. They're doing crazy. We're just like Alright. Yeah, that's cool.
She gets
Good.
so beautiful.
That's fun.
Nice. Everyone feel a little looser?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Good. Alright. Now, okay, so okay, now it's gonna be the exciting part. We have to find something to examine. So my job as a facilitator is not, I mean, I can come up with ideas, but, you know, my job is really to just kind of facilitate, like, the group in finding something to examine, examining it, questioning it, discussing it, and having an educational thing with it. So, but yeah.
It's like a general thing, so we can talk about the example.
Well, it could,
What does that mean?
it could be anything. Like, I think we should have a brainstorm where nothing is stupid, where nothing is wrong or crazy, and I'll like list them out, and then we'll pick one.
Question?
Yeah.
How much time do we have?
Yeah.
What are we going till? It's
What time is it right
20
now?
to 4 right now.
20 to 4?
3:40.
Okay, so I don't think we should spend more than 5 to 10 minutes trying to find something to examine. So we can get to the discussion part of it. So I'm thinking if we have something to examine by 3:50, and then we question for 10 minutes, and then have maybe 15-minute, 20-minute discussion, debrief a little bit after that.
I'm gonna have to leave early.
Okay. When are you having to leave?
I have to talk to somebody and then be somewhere by 4:30. I have to be at 60 Wall by 4:30.
Oh, okay.
Is that at 4:30 or 5?
I'm facilitating, so I
For 5 is when.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, just leave whenever you have to. Do we want to aim to? Maybe we could aim to end at like 4:30ish. I feel like we can move along. We can do it. Okay, good. So let's get started. Brainstorm. What can we examine?
Well, we were already talking about the word pedagogy.
Yeah, I was thinking like almost all of that.
Okay, so the word pedagogy. I'm really into the idea of using space as an analytical lens, so maybe we could think of, I don't know, Bryant Park as a teaching space. Sorry, Bryant Park as text. Bryant Park as text. Hi, welcome.
I'm Alex.
Alex, nice to meet you. We're brainstorming things to examine. So anything, right?
That's bubble blower.
Bubble, this dude?
Okay. Maybe sticking to the general theme. If these horizontal pedagogy is really working. So, yeah, how successful Occupy
Success of HP in the movement.
Yeah.
How about examining sensory perceptions?
In general?
In the moment.
What?
Sensory perceptions in the moment. Hear, feel, taste, smells. How about something like spiritual growth through political action?
Spiritual growth through political action.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Corollary to that, fun and political action. Fun, making the revolution fun.
Making it accessible to
So accessibility in the revolution.
accessibility and fun.
There was this Bryant statue over there that I saw when I was on my way in here this morning. I thought it was fun to examine.
Yeah, man.
That's kind of like Bryant Park's space. Anything else? Alright, well it's 3:44, and we have a list of things. I imagine any one of them would be good to examine. So we've got the word pedagogy, Bryant Park in general as a text, the bubble blower, this area here, the success of horizontal pedagogy in the movement, sensory perceptions in the moment, spiritual growth through political action, fun in the revolution, fun and accessibility in the revolution or in the movement, and the Bryant statue.
I feel like a lot of these kind of coalesce into what I forgot your name already. What Jack was saying in terms of examining this as a text and the whole sensory perceptions. It seems like that and the Bryant statue all kind of fit into those two things as one. To me, I think it's almost like.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to perceive whatever it is we examine. we for sure will. And those perceptions will probably be into something that we learn. So we have 5 minutes now until 3:50. If by 3:50 we picked one of those things to examine, I think we'd be doing really well.
Yeah.
Maybe try to convert this idea of the park. Like this, everything we said can converge into like this real park. So yeah, like I mean that'll be very wide too, but maybe like the exploring the sensations and really talking about like the movement too, like and what we've been doing and being fun and accessible. I mean, the revolution and everything. So yeah, maybe try to, or you prefer like something very specific. Like
As a facilitator, I will encourage us to pick something very specific, because if you teach too general, the education isn't.
I'm thinking like something like how space would affect the learning experience.
So Bryant Park that sounds like Bryant Park is.
Yeah, well, it's definitely in that
that realm.
in that realm for sure. It's something about space, being here, the experience of the space relative to the learning experience.
yeah.
Okay.
That could also return. Obviously, the whole movement's been about space. The occupation, giving up, taking, relinquishing, getting, forcing space.
Yeah.
So in volume, right? I mean,
Yeah.
So it's as a three-dimensional kind of, and even the bridge is about taking space. The barriers that go up around the park is about taking space. How we kind of are in this volume. How Zuccotti Park was a volume, an architectural construct of space. The notion of occupy also well to fill a vulgar space. So it just had a recurring theme over and over and over again. It's very architectural in its own,
Yeah.
its own way, like my former profession.
Sure. Well, my experience has been that the more we can all share in an experience of the thing that we're examining, the better chance we're going to have to learn something about it. And the thing about concepts and themes, as great as they are, it's really hard for me to know what you mean by space. It's really hard for us to all be on the same page about the concept because it's so out, But like something like the park or the bubble blower or we're all, we can share in that. That's just my experience. I've had plenty of really interesting conversations about ideas, but it's also been my experience that when we start talking about that, we just start talking about stuff that we already know. We just talk about stuff that we are already thinking together.
Maybe the statue.
Is the statue
like place you can meet at and all be seeing the same thing but have different ways of seeing it together?
That's a specific thing.
Yeah.
And it's about something that you probably don't know.
Right.
Do you know what that statue is all about?
Oh, then it's Bryant himself, or something?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I didn't look.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so we didn't even know that.
I don't even know who he is. So.
Yeah.
What has he done?
All right. So it sounds like what we're, and obviously I've influenced it a little bit, but we've got the park in general, and then we've got the statue specifically as being things that we could examine. So is there one that seems?
We could think about different kinds of narrative telling. So, like, in a sense, the statue is going to sort of signify this is what we're building statues and trying to tell us. Whereas, like, we're creating now this meaning. So, different types of using space. So, like, whether it's not or different activities in spaces.
So we would examine.
I guess we could use the statue as a text and then look at ways that other people use the park differently. Because most people don't kind of grasp the statue.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so you're saying we could do the statue, but then look at how everyone else is. Okay.
Or maybe, the statue as example of how the park is designed. So it's like the park is designed in a certain way, but people use it.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to talk to somebody first.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's cool. Nice to meet you. Jana, right?
Enjoy it.
So it's 3:51. We gotta pick. It sounds like Jack just proposed that we go to look at the statue, but then we also consider that statue in the context of the park as a space in general. We'd be going with the two things. So, how's everyone feel about that? Everyone gonna be like, that sucks? Okay, alright, let's do it. So, it's 3:51. I say at 4:02. Is that enough? 4:02, 10 minutes? No, wait, yeah, that's 10 minutes. We'll come back here.
Okay.
So,
we're
gonna examine. Yeah.
Oh,
we're gonna have a field trip.
I thought this was like
Sweet.
No. We're gonna go examine.
All right. Oops, sorry, got my fingers in the way of it. We're gonna head on over to the Bryant statue now and examine it.
Examine the statue.
If you're just joining us, we are we're at Bryant Park in New York City right now for Occupy Wall Street's Summer Disobedience School. We're at the Occupy University, and we're having a class on horizontal pedagogy. I'm Waylon Lank at lank.tv. Now we're going to go examine that statue. Hey, these
Nice.
kids got hops.
Yeah. You seem to keep ending up in the same places. Size.
So what I'm noticing as I examine the statue is, I mean, the focal piece is Bryant and his poem, but it's framed within this very neoclassical thing, kind of framing him in the world of Greek heroes or philosophers, framing him within the classics as a cultural institution. We've got these kind of classical looking urns on either side of him. He's got the this blanket over him. I don't know if it just means it's cold or if it makes him look like a Roman in a toga. It's almost kind of got that feel to it. He's got his manuscript on his lap because he's a writer. He's kind of enthroned, and he's looking out over Bryant Park and down, I want to say 45th Street. Of course, if you're going to talk about the focus of interest in the park, what he's looking at, it is the lawn and then the street. So he's sort of enthroned here at a distance, overlooking things from an aloof standpoint. This is just me examining this statue like we're supposed to be doing.
Foundry was the Gorham Company, probably. I think that's probably what that means, I guess.
Like where they got the metal?
Yeah. And who did the mold, too.
There's no plaque or anything.
There really isn't, no. Nothing like that. Did anyone look around the back?
No, I was trying to see. I guess you could go.
No.
So, if I'm Bryant, yep, I can write down, I think it's 45th. Guess they're being able to go around the back.
chair.
I mean, there's a quotation on the front by him.
Is that his quotation? I would think so, right?
Presumably, it's
Yeah,
not.
you would think so.
I mean, if it's not cited to someone else, it must be him.
Uh-huh.
Which implies it's always some kind of writing.
Yeah. And this is the library.
The inscription. Oh, right there. Oh, it's brilliant.
All right, so he's sitting. This is the library he's in front of.
That seems like
He owns the property. I know. I'm really the power broker right now.
He's holding a manuscript, some papers, manuscript of some sort, I guess.
Yeah, it's got. Yeah.
There's no text on it. It is sort of a leather-bound kind of volume of some sort. There's no text on it.
about 4 o'clock.
I wonder if maybe it was a poet laureate.
Yeah, somebody in the truck. Yeah, they don't put landowner in fields like that. That results in sheriff or whatever.
Okay. Interesting.
Why don't we go back to the shade?
Oh, sorry. All right, so now we're going to head back to the shade for the discussion part of horizontal pedagogy, the horizontal classroom.
I would want to force this on you. Thanks.
So whose Roman numerology is good? What year is that? Do you know?
What are the letters?
What is it? Does anyone know that year?
What are the letters?
I'm going to go to a spot with a little more space over here.
And here. 1911.
All right, cool. So, just examine. We did agree to examine not only the statue, but like what else is happening and the way that other people are using the space as well. So we just to mark us in time here. We did the intro, we got the check-in, the visit, did the examination. Well, we had a little like deliberation about what to examine. Did some examining, and now we're going to question. So it's not necessarily stuff you think; it's stuff you don't know. So, are there questions? And the first year, I think it's like, who is this guy?
So the first question is, who was that guy?
And what the poem means.
Yeah. You didn't want to write down the text?
I did.
just like what it's trying to say.
What it's trying to say.
Maybe why people don't stop and let the statue work.
What's that?
I'm trying to remember the text. Yet let no empty gust of passion find utterance in the way.
A blast of worlds of dust.
Like howling down the howling street.
Yep. It dies away.
Right. Like calm power, calm strength, calm force.
We're just like you were asking a question about that specific line. About like what calm means there?
No, I was just trying to remember the line.
Oh yeah. I have it. I can.
I have it.
You a poet? You write it?
Whenever people come to the park to be seen or to see other people, I mean, obviously.
I mean, a question I have is kind of like, I've been thinking about what role like naming spaces after people has, because it seems really important for people to have their names be associated with a place, and like street names or building names or park names or whatever. It's such an honor. But given the fact that we were the only ones looking at that statue, like, and people do say Bryant Park,
Right.
and so that name does live on. But how does that name live? You know what I mean? Like, if nobody really knows who Bryant is, and the statue isn't even really making an effort to remind us, like, what does it really mean to have something named after you?
And it's interesting because the original people that were on this island had no desire to name places after people. They felt that the Europeans' tendency to do that was rather insane, actually. And that how would you name a mountain? How would you name an island? Particularly after a person's name. So just to think, oh well, the native Manhattan, the Manhattan. I mean, most Native Americans were really sort of thought that the Europeans were a bit sort of crazy or just off the mark by naming locations, particularly people's names. Not people's names. They didn't have that investment in naming a place because they didn't feel like it, like any human being had the sort of the right to name something like a mountain or a piece of land or an island.
They did name things, just not after people.
Right. And the names usually had more of a spiritual sense to them, more of like what people felt about a place,
Or they were descriptive.
Or descriptive, yeah. But not so much about ownership. They felt that the European sense of ownership of property was basically crazy.
Another question is like, what the whole thing about the statue? It's supposed to tell us something. We're trying to figure it out, but it was so unclear. The robes and the columns and the chair and the little trees or something.
addition to that, I wondered how does the whole setup of it actually influence how people use the park? Does it? If that was entirely gone.
Which one? I'm just wondering, like, what would he sitting over there, like, from despair? What would he be thinking?
Particularly, I mean, the years that he was alive, 1794 to 1878. Yeah, thinking about like what's different, or like when was he doing his work? What was it like for him to be alive? What was it that he influenced and how that got him to have this park named for him?
And
what was it like then? How is it different now?
And when was the park founded relative to his life? Was it during or after? And then 1911 is the date of the sculptors of the art piece of art there. 1911. No, I'm sorry. It's the date of the art.
Yeah, the question of the Roman numerals, right?
What's that?
The Roman numerals.
MCMXI.
Yeah, like why do we feel like we have to make that? I always see now when I see columns, I'm always like, why do we feel like we have to have columns? And why do we need to use Roman numerals? And why do we need to what's up with that? Like when I go to Washington D.C. too, and I see all the columns, and it's all mixed up. It looks Roman and Greek. What are we trying to prove?
It's all a reference to classicism, which therefore means order and therefore means godliness. Anything which was classical had its grounding in certain principles of architecture and sequence of space, refinement, and also meant civilization. So to deviate from that often meant, in those times, meant chaos. That's why modernism had such a huge clash with classicism. But classical, especially in the formal layouts of large cities and capitals like Washington, D.C., are laid out in very formal axes, right? And so, it's a very principled and rigid order. I mean, that's probably broken down into the golden rectangle, and which has its orders kind of off the refinement of the human body, which is all kind of links itself to religion, and that there is an order to everything. If there's order to everything, then there's civilization, and a civilization which is run by laws. So that's classicism has always kind of meant order and stability.
And that kind of contrast between the classical Greco-Roman orders and imposing that in the New World kind of goes into this kind of what you were almost touching on, is this Euro-American idea of civilization versus wilderness, and the fact that I think that part of naming places after people is claiming this park for Bryant. And it's like pissing on the bush.
Yes.
Yeah.
But who's doing the pissing, and like what does it signify?
Right.
Like if a big jungle cat pisses on something, it's like don't come here.
Well, I mean, like think of all the mountain peaks and all the places that they were naming in the 1800s and 1700s when they were, colonizing and conquering, and I say that in quotes, various distant lands. And I mean, how many Lake Victorias are there around the world? There's dozens of them, right? Like the Golden Age and Victorianism, and that meant God, King, and country, and to name things after regal monarchs was to claim the kind of the territory for king and country or queen and country. So Lake Victoria, and Mount, all the various mountains. This is kind of colonial powers, and they kind of go and completely, erase any native claims, and they piss on the mountain instead. They put a name on it.
So it sounds like we've got this list of questions. It sounds like we started discussing a little bit, just flagging that, about naming, what it means to name, particularly what it would mean to name this space, Bryant Park, Captain Sky Bryant, facing the statue that was just examined, and like then how, what's the interaction maybe with that name
some big event happened, you just rename it after that person.
I think we lived for a few months in Park. I think he's alive. I think he's the current CEO.
Or are you just saying that
Isn't Toddy living? Isn't he a living guy? I don't know. I think he's the current CEO of the real estate company.
I mean, the company who actually owns and manages that space, that land there? Yeah.
It's a privately owned space.
Right. Public-private type of thing, yeah.
Well, publicly for private. It's owned by a real estate company called Brookfield or something.
Yeah.
Brookfield.
And Bloomberg's on the board there. Bloomberg's girlfriend is on the board.
But the point being, that's an example of something.
So I guess to be more specific, my question: what changes in renaming space? Is there anything? And does that change how people use it? Like, we call it Zuccotti Park or whatever, but like, or does it?
I mean, that's sort of an interesting question, and this takes it away from here, so I don't know if we want to go in the direction, but I immediately thought of the Twin Towers now being called Freedom Tower, because that, and Zuccotti Park now by some, and it's not necessarily sticking so much, being Liberty Park, like these kind of changes that we do from time to time. An interesting sort of issue of space and ownership and event-related namings of spaces and things like that.
Well, I mean, it's political too. In indigenous communities in America, that happens often. Where, for instance, my family's from Orleans, California originally, and the indigenous name is Penumnik. And a lot of people now talk about, Indian people from there talk about Orleans as Penumnik. So instead of naming it after New Orleans, which is named after a French city, calling it by its own name. So it's all about ownership. And I feel like that's part of, correct me if I'm wrong, but calling Zuccotti Liberty is, instead of calling it after maybe some CEO, naming it for what we're trying to have.
Interesting. Yeah, so the name of the park perhaps has something to do with the claim to that space for reasons oftentimes political.
Right.
Sometimes maybe other, but like for political reasons. I wonder who this guy Bryant was in the political scheme of things. Like, why would they, if he was, let's say, a writer or a poet, how did he have enough power as that type of figure to have a park named after? Did it have to do with the library? Was he a big donor to the library, perhaps, something like that? I don't know if you guys know, but that building is yeah.
I looked him up on Wikipedia.
Oh, you're cheating.
Am I cheating? No, this is an interesting educational question. Here we are.
No, that's good.
Is that cheating? If it's a question,
He's certainly not a major writer.
Not a major one, no.
I mean, we would know about him, I guess.
Yeah.
But just before maybe, I think I just saw an interesting connection, because in talking about naming a space and then bringing up Zuccotti, for instance, like, and the Freedom Tower is actually really interesting, because what's the name of Tahrir Square is also called Liberty. It's called Liberty
Square, yeah.
And Liberty are kind of synonymous, It's interesting that we call, I bet the freedom that we're using to refer to that tower that's built where the Twin Towers are, is a very different kind of freedom than the freedom that's referred to by the Liberty.
Is that like the tower that's going to be named like?
Yeah, there's a Freedom Tower, and it's 1,776 feet tall.
Well, it's a different building there. It's not like we're renaming the same building.
Right, but
it's a new building.
Yep.
There's something new.
It's a little different.
It's very different. But the connection I saw was this idea about claiming what you want for a reason, naming as a claim.
Yeah.
And then this connection to, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Alex.
The idea of classicism. What you're trying to say about religion by naming something and building this statue there. Naming it after this person and having this thing there is definitely trying to make some kind of claim, right? You're trying to do something.
I wouldn't link it directly to religion, but I would try it indirectly links in the sense that it's trying to lay order on what might have previously been an ordered system. It's a claim. So religion falls within that.
Yeah, for sure. And I
But
think
I mean, you can look at all the colonial countries, like that are renaming their cities back to the original names
Right.
long after the colonial powers have left. I mean, you see that in India and a lot of other places around the world. The cities are being, are being renamed continually back to indigenous names. Or even in Mount McKinley, formerly known as Mount McKinley, now back to Mount Denali.
right.
I wonder if one of the sort of the process through which that happens needs to take into consideration sort of informal systems of naming, because it's not like some government whether just comes along and changes the name. There obviously needs to be popular support that builds up for that. And so, I mean, if you look at the sense of having more colloquials type of argument, all that means that the space can have more than one definition, and then they sort of interact. And then maybe eventually one is codified into like this space is written as this on the maps. Which maps?
I like the word that you used, the interaction between the space, the very same park, Zuccotti, and the very same space that we call Liberty, is like there is an interaction between those two spaces, even though they're one space. Zuccotti's sort of like the authority. That's where those security guys work for. That's who that big building owns and manages that property. And then there's Liberty Park, which is sort of like the people's park, and it's a dialogue between the two constantly, and a constant tension. You even feel that when there's only like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 occupiers down there holding a sign or having a table out. It's become to the point where even a few make a significant statement being present in that space at this point. I like that interaction in space.
It's a competing. The space is literally just a battlefield for competing orders, right? So you've got Zuccotti, which represents a certain order, and then you've got Liberty, which represents a certain order, and the space is literally like a battleground for it, right? And occupying seems also to be like a kind of activity in that struggle.
Yeah.
And the names kind of seem to like call out. So if like we were to come here and be like, this is not Bryant Park. To us, this is Jack Park. This is Jack's Park. Like
It's better.
Yeah, it's nice. And there would be some struggle. At first it'd be a little absurd, but I just like these competing orders. The space itself has no order.
It seems like I feel like talking about competing orders. It seems like at least Bloomberg, I'm not sure from our side, but from Bloomberg's side, he tried to deny that Occupy has order. So that's the whole thing about needing to sanitize the park, the excuse for raiding it. And that ties into, again, the whole idea of imposing this very rigid neoclassical structure to impose Euro-American order on the American wilderness. I don't know, I just saw a connection.
Interesting.
Your comment, this whole conversation right now reminds me of first day Gatsby, and I went to the last people's congress for May Day, and I was talking to somebody there, and then he just said, tomorrow in Liberty Park there was something like, but I had never heard of Liberty Park. I knew it was like Chicago Park, and I said, Liberty Park, and then when he told me exactly what it was, I just asked, wow, Chicago Park, and then he said, no, now it's Liberty Park. So it's like just competing forces. Because if I say, for example, Chicago Park, it's like choosing sides, right? You're with like those guys who try to control, and the park is not theirs, it's ours. So let's all park liberty. Yeah.
But let's also not be like even with the word pedagogy. Let's not be afraid of owning words and using the words that we choose to use. As long as we're clear on what we mean. Let's just not let others determine what's right or not in terms of the language we use. We do that all too often. I find myself doing that with Zuccotti and Liberty. I'm like, Zuccotti, and I'm like, no, I mean Liberty.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm wrong in saying Zuccotti, but, so we censor ourselves that way, and I'd like to stop doing that. I think that's part of what horizontal is. It's like, to stop censoring ourselves and just allow it to emerge, Yeah. The language. And then, if it comes out and it's wrong, then you talk about that.
Right.
Like say, hey, okay, it's another way to look at that term or whatever.
And I think that the name, if Bryant Park was, for instance, Malcolm X Park, this place would have a totally different character.
Yeah.
I just think I don't know. Somehow I think that would affect the space. I don't know how, but
there's something that goes on still in this DC about America. For example, in Latin America, you do something like some people are more radical. They say like the Americans refer to you guys. I mean, they will be mad now. We're Americans as well. So there's this discourse struggle. It's like, okay, they call themselves we're America, but we're all America. So how do we manage that? Like some people find it arrogant. For example, when you say North America, referring to United States, for example, it's not that accurate,
right?
But yeah, it's a little bit more accurate. At least it's not Latin America.
Right.
And but some people find it arrogant, like, well, why do you care about that? I mean, they're Americans, Latin people Americans, so it's the way you use language. And then it's like we're in the middle of this situation. For instance, saying like, okay, so let's try to reclaim language. Like, yeah, we're Americans too, but they call themselves American more than we do ourselves. Okay, what can we do about that? So it's just like, how do we reclaim that? So is it important, for example, for us still in Latin America, to try to claim ourselves Americans too? That would be kind of crazy, right? So yeah, it's like, how do we manage that?
That's probably the biggest limitation on reclaiming language. You could just come up with your own perfect language tomorrow that would be your own. Understand it.
Right.
You would know what you're thinking. but yeah, so you have to balance using symbols that have a history that can evoke in another person a common image, but also using symbols that you don't know at all. So we can start, like with pedagogy, it's for a certain group of people, you say pedagogy and it calls to mind old discourse and books that they've read and whatever. And for those people, it's great for situating. For other people, it's utterly meaningless. And I think it's the same for space things. Because something like Bryant to most people is meaningless. Right. It's just some white guy's name.
Right. It's just some white guy's name. Yeah.
But one thing you would know, in New York City, United States of America, it's more than likely a white guy.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be some black dude or a Chinese guy or a Native American guy. Sometimes it would be, but
unless it's Martin Luther King.
Unless what?
Unless it's Martin Luther King.
Yes, unless it's
Malcolm X.
Or Malcolm X. Somehow now he's become
They just
acceptable.
renamed the tribe over in Giant.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's Malcolm X Boulevard.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Okay. Listen, it's 4:30. So let me just say, very short what Wikipedia says about William Cullen Bryant.
Oh yeah.
I won't read the whole thing, but he was actually born in Massachusetts. He was a poet, journalist, and an editor. He was the longtime editor of the New York Evening Post. So, but he wrote a very his notable work as a poet is a work called Thanatopsis, and I'm pretty sure that poem comes from his books. Thanatopsis. I don't know what that means, Thanatopsis, but yeah.
Something about that.
Yeah, Thanos. Yeah.
So the Post has gone downhill ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the Post.
How's the Topsis spelled?
Topsis.
Because that's probably like
Topsis.
That means to fall in, like a ptosis. I believe it's the same derivative would mean to fall in. So death, falling.
To fall into death or something.
Here, I'll read a little bit.
Okay.
In 1884, New York City's Reservoir Square at the intersection of 42nd and 6th Avenue was renamed Bryant Park in his honor. The city later named a public high school in Long Island City, Queens. Although he's thought of as a New Englander, Bryant, for most of his lifetime, was thoroughly a New Yorker and very dedicated one at that. He was a major force behind the idea that became Central Park, as well as a leading proponent of creating the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He was one of a group of founders of the New York Medical College. He gained close affinities with the Hudson River School of Art and was intimate friends with Thomas Cole. As a writer, Bryant was an early advocate of American literary nationalism, and his own poetry focusing on nature as a metaphor for truth established a central pattern in the American literary tradition. Martin Luther King actually quoted Bryant in his speech, "Give Us the Ballot," when he says there is something in this universe which justifies Bryant in saying, "Truth crushed to earth will rise again." So this place was called Reservoir Park until 1884, and they called it Bryant Park.
What year? I'm sorry. When did they name it?
1884.
1884. Did they say anything about the statue at all?
No. Anyway, that's interesting. So it's 4:30. We discussed. We had an interesting discussion about naming and claiming and power and politics, and we also learned, it seems, a little bit about Bryant. Who Bryant is. So at the end here, in the last few minutes, we said we'd end at 4:30. Maybe we'll go for 15 more. If that's all right. Because I think it's important to debrief and talk about it, because it was a class on horizontal pedagogy. So.
How long does it take to get to Zuccotti for you? Or Liberty?
Liberty, yeah. What means? Yeah. How are you gonna get it?
Sorry.
Subway?
Sorry. 35 minutes.
Well, you want to be there by 5? You should go. Do you know how to get there? Catch the D to 14th, jump on the N, take the D to 14th, and then catch the R to Cortlandt. You'll be right there. Yeah.
Do you know if there's a water fountain?
Yeah, there's some water fountains over there.
Oh. Well, you can catch it at. You can do that too. You got choices, man.
Can I get your number, because you said you wanted to
Yeah, definitely.
about design stuff?
Uh-huh. For sure.
Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. So at this point, usually we do like a little takeaway, like something that maybe you like a closing remark. If there's something that you might have learned in this whole process, that usually feeds pretty well into a debrief. So it could be about what we discussed or how we discussed it. Does anyone want to say a little something about what you came away?
Make it. I'm confused. So now it's like the closing.
Say again?
Now it's
Closing remark.
and
Yeah.
then the debrief.
And then we'll debrief. Oh, yeah. But they usually mix it with each other. Has anyone taken anything away?
Yeah. I've got a blog, and one of the things I've been interested in starting to do on it more is looking at native art. And so it's kind of interesting to think about naming places. So talking about this in terms of native art, how does this imposition of neoclassical forms onto the landscape, how do you talk about that in terms of indigenous issues and indigenous art? So it's been thought-provoking.
Like that idea of occupying the language, right in the middle. So now, with all these details, especially like the last part of it, I would think it's like, wow, then it made me connect the American idea, the word itself. And yeah, I mean, I always try to look at things like from both sides.
I never would have looked at that statue otherwise. I never would have read that poem. Now I have it in my notebook. Like I definitely know, like in the year about Bryant, and like Bryant was an editor. It's called Reservoir Square. And like the concept about naming as space is a place for struggle and where orders come. I definitely would take that away. So why don't we go along, and then the last part is just to kind of like, now we went about this supposedly using this thing called horizontal pedagogy. So now is the time to kind of talk about that part, not necessarily what we talked about, but how we talked about it. So I mean, I thought it was interesting that when I brought up the Wikipedia thing, we all kind of laughed, and like the thing was that I was cheating, you know. I thought that was kind of interesting. And also, I was a little self-conscious because I brought up the statue, and that was the thing that we ended up looking at. And I don't know if that I was conflicted as a facilitator of whether or not to offer that. But I don't know. I thought it was a good idea.
But I think it worked in the context of having seemed to evolve out of a brainstorming session of what are we going to examine.
Yeah.
And in that happening that way, I think what an organic thing that came out of the statue was, actually, I think we incorporated almost every one of the ideas that we had brainstormed as possible examinations to start with. So, but if we hadn't proceeded with a brainstorm and then decided on one, if we had just said, let's go to the statue and examine it, who knows if the dialogue afterwards, which we just had, would have been as comprehensive and expansive and imaginative as it was.
Yeah. One would hope that it's because that idea occurred in a kind of deliberative space, that like we were just all talking about, it was kind of up for grabs, that we were able maybe to engage with it in a slightly different way than we would if I had just said, yeah, okay, so today we're going to look at the Bryant statue.
Yeah, totally.
That should be one thing. Same thing for months, but it means something different when you build it together with the other, not just, you know, pick one side of it, pick what sounds for you. Yeah.
When you're doing this kind of pedagogy in other, when you're not teaching pedagogy, do you bring in something to examine, or is it like everyone discusses what they're going to examine?
Typically, it's been that somebody will bring in something, but that somebody isn't necessarily the facilitator. So the ways that we've been practicing it, we'll bring in a text, or like we'll do a Skillshare. Like we did samba dancing one time, we did notebook making for Skillshares.
What makes
notebook making? Like someone else will facilitate. So like this was the first time when I actually have like left open that what we're going to examine to deliberation, but I think that it's really important. It's a kind of a question we've had about whether or not the person who actually brings the thing is kind of influencing the dynamic in ways that aren't as participatory. But yeah, I brought my folder with like all the kinds of stuff that we've looked at in the past. But everyone in the group will kind of bring in something.
Oh, each member of the group?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes like 3 people bring something, we put it on the table, we all look at them, and then pick one. Or sometimes like the class before will decide on something altogether, and then that's the thing we'll do.
I have to say that there was a bit of confusion when we moved from questions.
Yeah.
Because we didn't, I mean, I was taking notes, so for me it would be important to realize where exactly was the position, especially because sometimes you want to say something when you are questioning, but you don't do because you know it's just question time, and then it turns into a discussion and you realize that you already allowed to just like say what you think. And it was a bit confusing.
Yeah. I think I probably could have been much more explicit about that.
Yeah.
Because when we started talking about naming, I did say something like, okay, now it seems like we're talking about naming, but I didn't say, okay, now we've moved from the questioning part to the discussion part. It's important to do.
Yeah, I think.
So that's it.
That was awesome.
Cool.
That's
Thank you.
horizontal pedagogy.
Thank you.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
This is amazing.
Love, ignorant master's idea, because that's what we were. I mean, for one another, right?
Yeah.
Nobody knew what that was all about, and experiencing like this in way too. It's awesome. It's like through that exactly through the guy, the French guy who developed math. He's really right. Because I mean, just to try to give you an idea, I don't know. And this guy, he just started to teach people what he didn't know at all. For example, he was able to teach French. No, like Dutch. No.
He was
able to
Belgian.
teach.
No, he was French and went to Belgium.
Yeah, and then he was able to teach French to people who didn't, who spoke only Dutch, and he didn't spoke. I mean, he didn't speak a word of Dutch. I mean,
He was able to find a way to do that.
yeah, he just gave the guys a book, had the text translated to different languages, and then I think it was his.
Yeah.
Yeah, just got it.
What term did you use? Ignorant masters?
The Ignorant Schoolmaster is the name of the book.
I love that.
Nice.
So
Great, man. You should read
I'll
it.
definitely read
that
it.
he says that teaching is a commanding of the will, but not of the intelligence. So like, so that I think that's what a facilitator in a horizontal situation does. Like, I'm here to say like, now we're gonna do this, but I'm not gonna say about what we're gonna examine or what you're gonna come away with. Like, I didn't know what we were gonna learn beforehand. Like, I didn't predetermine it. It wasn't set in stone, and what we ended up doing, looks very different than what I might have expected. So, I mean, I didn't know we were going to go in the direction of that naming idea, make all those connections. I just didn't know that. All I knew was we're going to do this process. And I think like when in teaching situations, the idea would be, if you have to teach something, you just go through the procedure, and then when it comes to the thing for examination, you offer yours as the thing of examination. That's the way. So if you have to do a teach-in on, fracking, then you bring in a fracking document, and that's what we examine, and that's what we question, and we have a discussion about it. So it makes it a more, the idea is it's supposed to be empowering at the very least.
And that's, I think it talks a lot about Occupy. It's very violent men claim that no hierarchical leadership is necessary for movement to be successful. Like everybody's able to. Nobody is supposed to always supposed to learn something from somebody else.
Right. Alex, you want to say something?
I was just struck by something. Just trying to kind of link this whole aspect of naming, from this park, and from a historic kind of colonial perspective, and this kind of territoriality, to what it's kind of becoming in this now. This really in the contemporary setting, where naming now really happens with sports stadiums, with corporate logos. And how we move to the commodification of space and the kind of this new 21st century territorialism with AT&T Park and all the other just kind of soulless names that don't celebrate learning or poetry or some of the things that might have been celebrated with naming of certain places by great literary people and civil rights leaders and things like that, but now commodities and commercialism and the new kind of gods and order of the 21st century. And very much as to what we're in Occupy fighting against, is that this complete depersonalization of not just language, but learning and education. And instead, we're being conditioned to buy and consume, to read and learn.
Not looking at our baby boy sweeping the park.
Well, it's 4:45.
Awesome, man.
Cool.
Cool.
Thank you,
Very
guys.
cool. Yeah.
This has been a great thing.
It's been a lot of
Well,
fun.
we're gonna try and be back at SDS. I can't be
Cool.
next week, but someone else will be.
Well, this is it for me. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I'm Waylon Lank. You've been watching Lank.tv. This has been...
streaming, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Appreciate that. Awesome.
Definitely. So I'm going to go ahead and take the stream down. This is actually going to be my last time streaming in New York City in the foreseeable future because I'm moving back west. If you'd like to support my stream, there's a WePay button on the www.lank.tv page. Thank you, Occupy Earth, I believe, for restreaming me. And I will see you guys on the West Coast.